My name is Majeed Simaan. I was basically graduated 2018 from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. I did my PhD in finance. I joined Stevens afterwards, so I'm a tenure track faculty in finance and financial engineering. So I look more on risk management. Usually my general interest would be financial risk management. I focused on a specific area, asset allocation under uncertainty, and its implication in terms of asset pricing. So I do both theory and empirical analysis. I'm interested in statistical learning as well. So I have a number of projects that actually are heavy in computation, whether it involves machine learning. I have other models or theoretical contributions that look more as multivariate statistics, help us more understand how we deal with uncertainty. And by uncertainty, I mean like very specific domain when it comes to decision making. How can you make a decision when you have uncertainty about the inputs or the parameters you actually use in the model? Recently, I've been I have a small idea that actually I was developing. It's called a machine learning efficient frontier, and the name, as it implies, as usually we know in financial economics, there's something called the mean variance efficient frontier. So you always think about efficiency and optimality in the presence of risk and reward. Now, the model is like very normative and appealing. The problem is it has its own limitation, as I mentioned, in terms of the parameter uncertainty and giving the the rise or the popularity of data science, machine learning topics. How does it actually fit into this literature? And the contribution was to see how you can actually use advanced machine learning algorithms in order to enhance your decision making. And by enhancing, I mean mitigating that uncertainty to come up with a better risk reward trade-off. So I'm interested in, as I mentioned, that's part of the stuff I do in asset allocation. So as the main theme of my research, I was always interested in statistics. So I have a master's in statistics originally. So I always view things with this uncertainty. So I was able to come up or look at the intersection between these two. As machine learning is something that actually here to stay, it's becoming very popular. It's becoming more like a common lingo, but it also comes with other disadvantages. And the problem with the disadvantages is that these fancy, or we call it like more nonlinear models, they actually come with the cost of complexity. So the question is, how can you do as a trade-off between complexity and performance, right? So this is actually another research area I'm looking into, as how we can have more explainability for these black box algorithms, but at the same time not sacrificing too much the performance of the model. The mean variance efficient frontier is actually something that goes back to the 50s. You can think about it as a big bang in finance that actually took place, and it's a major theory. Given it's been a long theory that is actually established, there's a lot of prolific research around this area that tries to study, as I mentioned, the sensitivity of the model. So there's been a lot of contribution in this field, how you can actually try to mitigate, as I mentioned, this parameter uncertainty. So the innovation part comes from my end is try to, as I mentioned, to connect something more recent, such as machine learning, with something has been old and well-established theory, such as the mean variance frontier. The rigor of doing something exciting, exploring something new, or leveraging technologies to answer research questions, I think that's always keeps me excited. So recently I've been learning more about reinforcement learning. That's something can actually keep me up all night because I'm really excited. I'm interested in the science behind it, such as dynamic programming, for instance, and how you can actually think about reinforcement learning as going beyond typical dynamic programming. given my interest in asset allocation and uncertainty, actually, I was able to study and look into the concentration of risk, or the limits of diversification that large banks actually face, and what does it really imply for equity, and why we care about equity for banks. As I mentioned, that banks, since they're such a special public entity, their capital is subjected to regulation. And the way we understand the equity of these banks, that actually something tells us about more policy implications. So if you look at the evidence, you might find the result tells you one story, but then if you look at it from the asset allocation and uncertainty, you can actually have a different story and different policy implications. So I think in terms of my asset allocation and uncertainty, I think this is actually an important aspect of my research that tries to look into that and give us a better understanding of current evidence, current policies. Number of people, I would say my uncle, he's been my great influence. He was like a brother. He's like a brother, friend, like a father. I mean, all together. So definitely he's a major contributor. He's also faculty, so it's always lovely to talk to him. He's like a friend, and he's also, we have a number of projects together. I have another former advisor, Simon Beninga. He passed away, unfortunately. I was very grateful for him. He did help me a lot. I was a Fulbright candidate, and thanks to him, I was able to come to the U.S. So I always dedicate, I appreciate his contribution and what he saw in me as my former advisor. Obviously, I'm very grateful RPI, where I got my PhD from. My committees, they were all wonderful. I have paper with all of them. So I think that was very nurturing. I don't know if you've been to Troy, but Troy is an interesting place in upstate, and you don't really have much to do. So for me, that was like 5 years of my life, which I think that was, think about it as was very nurturing, and I really enjoyed it. So I'm working on additional projects. So I also work with big data, alternative data. So we have an interesting paper that looks at about 1,500,000 sell-side analyst reports. We're thinking about it from portfolio decision making. Again, asset allocation, what is actually the value of these reports, not just in terms of the quantitative content, because usually when you think about, as now we go through earning season, earning announcements, you see that these analysts actually give you a forecast for these, what are the expected earnings of companies. But when these numbers actually come, they come from a report, and that report contains a lot of qualitative information. So what we actually try to see is what is the value going beyond just the numbers, right? So what is the value there in the text? Sentiment, certain valuation terms, other aspects such as uncertainty. We can also study implications of policies, such as like there's a famous global research settlement which tried to reduce conflict of interest. So you can actually see how the tone changed before and after the regime. So I think that's actually what would be interesting. As I mentioned, studying policies, I think that makes research more interesting. It's also more appealing to the public. So basically, I'm mentoring about 3 students, PhD students here, and in addition, my contribution to committees. So that's part of my service here. So hopefully as one of my colleagues said to the PhD student, make us proud, right? So I do hope the PhD student make us proud, do well. It's also like I'm happy for them to come out from Stevens and succeed. It's a representation for us and the school as well. And then just move my pipeline, continue my network and collaboration. I'm working with interesting co-authors. And I think it's wonderful when you find other people. So I'm just working with somebody in Belgium, for instance. I never met him in person, but we're communicating, and it's just been wonderful collaboration, expanding network, meeting people. It's always part of the excitement, and that keeps me going. Yeah.